Welcome back to the Renaissance Humanism podcast. In today's episode, I will be discussing Japanese rearmament. The Japanese Prime Minister Fumio Kishida has been in office since 2021, pushing for the rearmament and remilitarization of the Japanese home islands. Currently, Japan has no capacity outside of support of the United States to launch counterstrikes against China and Korea. Its missile range is limited to 200 kilometers outside of the Japanese islands. To have the capacity to attack Beijing, Pyongyang, Japan will need a capacity of 16,000 kilometers. The Japanese have allowed their military capacities to dwindle for two main reasons. Japan's pacifist constitution, enforced by the Americans at the end of World War II in 1945 and implemented in 1947. Part of the constitution was that Japan would not launch offensive operations, or would only fight wars in self-defense. Japan government is now changing this policy, stating that Japan will only launch a first strike if the sovereignty independence is at stake. They are further stressing that the only reason it would launch a preemptive strike is if they had reliable military intelligence that they are facing an immediate attack from a hostile nation. The second reason Japanese demilitarized after World War II was that the United States being the guarantee of global shipping lanes and its allies unwilling or willing, in some cases, of Japan giving foreign policy over to the United States for their protection. It has been over 78 years since the end of World War II, and the United States was able to maintain this monopoly and control over its allies' foreign policy because the United States created the international system called globalization, which enabled all nations to have access to resources outside of their home nation's territories. One of the key reasons why Japanese started their imperialist project and took huge swathes of territory in the Pacific and on the Eurasian continent was the lack of natural resources inside the Japanese home islands. So an imperialistic policy had to be implemented in order to fit the international environment that the Japanese chose, imperialism, in order to survive in a hostile environment. The Americans changed this by protecting global trade, enforcing global peace among their allies. Since the election of Bill Clinton in 1992, the Japanese have seen the Americans consistently vote into office individuals who are increasingly isolationist and disinterested in global affairs. With America drawing in disenfranchisement in the American project of globalization and internationalism, it caused the American allies to implement their own foreign policies based on their own national self-interests. This is one reason why Japan is rearming. In some respects, the American withdrawal from the world is due to being overstretched in conflicts in Ukraine and the possibility of war with Taiwan within the next 5 years. It can be likened to the Roman Empire when it was heading towards its own decline, being overstretched trying to protect far-flung provinces, its overstretched military and financially. Currently, the United States has only 150 destroyers and 11 supercarriers, projected to get to 15 supercarriers, though there is doubt it will ever actually get to 15 supercarriers. It might just stay at around 13, 14. But these numbers, it depends on the American budget. There's not enough ships to protect global shipping lanes because the 11 supercarriers can only be in 11 places. Same with the destroyers as well. Destroyers also need to be used to provide protection for the carriers as well. What this means is that Americans don't have the ships to protect global shipping and to protect the globalization that they've actually created, that they've enabled, because its allies in the United Kingdom, in France, other Western nations, other nations that are part of the American-led alliance system, are all dependent upon American sea power to protect their shipping lanes and protect their own national and economic interests. It's why the United States was able to do pretty much what it wanted during the Cold War period and post-Cold War period, because they had all the military resources. And the reason why all these other nations went along with this project with Americans' decision making was because ultimately everybody got rich. Thank you for listening to this podcast. I hope you found this information useful. Please leave a comment. I hope you enjoyed this episode. If you want to ask me any questions, you can either leave a message in the comment section or message me over Medium or Substack. Thank you for your time, and please take care, and I wish you all a fantastic weekend.